Hey, David, are we good to go?
We are ready when you are, sir.
Okay, this is Chair of PEC, Practice and Education Committee, Jeff Garcia, calling the meeting to order. It is March 24th at 1 p.m. I'd like to establish a quorum. I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Ross?
I am here.
And I am here, Dr. Jeff Garcia present. So we do have a quorum, so we're able to conduct business today. Second order of business, I'd like to open up for public comment for any items that are not on the agenda today.
We are now open for public comment for items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. For this meeting, we will be giving 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. Okay, item number 3, discussion and possible approval of meeting minutes. I'll accept a motion or any corrections.
I'll go ahead and motion that we approve the January 27 meeting minutes.
Okay, and moderator, if we can open up for any public comment.
We are now open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. So we have a motion to accept the minutes as written from Member Ross. I will second that. We'll do a roll call vote. Member Ross?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye, so minutes are approved as written. Thank you. We'll move on to item 4, which is the discussion and possible action on continuing education course approval requests pursuant to Title 16, CCR 1535. These are complete applications. We have a lot of CE this time around. So I'll go ahead and open it up to our committee for any discussion on any of these items. Member Ross, we've approached this in different ways. Maybe we can take these in chunks or larger chunks. What do you prefer?
Yeah, I like the idea of kind of taking them in chunks here. We can kind of
Okay.
go in chronological order as they're listed.
Okay, so let's say then we'll go with item 4A, subsections 1 and 2. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as my comments go, for Coastal Vision Medical Group for these items 1 and 2, I would approve both of them as they were submitted.
Okay. And as a point of order, should we go to public comment for each section that we're considering?
I'm not your legal counsel, but I can say that you have the choice of batching them or taking them one at a time. But for every motion that you make,
Sure.
you must have a separate public comment section.
Okay, that makes sense. So since we're going to go in sections, we'll open for public comment for agenda item 4A.
All right, we are open for public comment on item 4A. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. Okay, we have a motion to approve all CE under sections 4A, and I will second that. We'll do a roll call vote. Member Ross?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye, so all of them are approved. Now we're going to move on to section 4B, Coastal Vision Group. I'll accept a motion or any comments from the committee.
I would motion that we approve all of the CE lectures in this section.
Okay, and we'll open up for public comment for section 4B.
We are now open for public comment on the motion. 4B, if you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. Okay, we have a motion to approve all CE under agenda item 4B. I will second that motion. Roll call vote. Member Ross?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye as well, so all are approved. Moving on to agenda item 4C, Coastal Vision Medical Group. I'll accept a motion and any comments.
Again, I didn't have any issue with this section of CE, so I would vote that we approve all of them in this section. And I would actually like to extend an acknowledgement to the Coastal Vision Medical Group. These are really high quality CE lectures. I think our licensees are in store for some really good education, but I would vote to approve all in this section.
Okay, I agree. And if we could open up for public comment for agenda item 4C.
We have a motion for item 4C. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. So we have a motion to accept all CE, approve all CE under section 4C. I second that motion. I'll do a roll call vote. Member Ross?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye. So all CE under section 4C are approved. Moving on to agenda item 4D. I'll accept a motion or any comments on that section of CE.
Yeah, I would like to make a couple of comments in this section. I would agree that all of the CE lectures in this section were of high quality. All of the hours that were requested for lined up with the amount of content that was in the lecture. However, there are 3 of the lectures where I think they should be reclassified into different categories. So I guess I'll just take them in order. The first one that I would recommend reclassifying is the rumors about tumors, cancers of the eye, nevi versus melanoma. They originally had submitted for it to be classified as general optometry, but I think it'd be more accurately classified under the ocular disease category. And then the next lecture that I would recommend a reclassification is the practical applications of posterior segment OCT retina cases, reading between the lines. Again, they had submitted for classification under general optometry, but this would be applicable to the ocular disease category. And then the last lecture I would comment on is practical applications of posterior segment OCT neurodegenerative cases. Again, they had submitted for general optometry classification, and I would reclassify to ocular disease. And that's all the comments I have.
Very good. If we can open up for public comment.
Was there a motion?
Let's see. I'll accept a motion to accept items in section 4D with amendments.
I'll motion.
Okay, and let's open up for public comment.
We are now open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. And I will second the motion to approve CE and section 4D with reclassifying 4D. Let's see, it was 8, 11, and 12 to ocular disease. And I will accept, let's do a roll call to do that, vote to do that. Member Ross?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye. So we have passed those with those corrections. We'll move on to the next section of CE, and that is section 4E. I will accept a motion or any corrections to those CEs.
I would motion that we approve all the lectures in this section.
Okay, and let's open up for public comment on section 4E.
We are now open for public comment on 4E. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. Okay, we have a motion to approve CE and item section 4E. I will second that. We'll go to a roll call vote. Member Ross?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye as well. So they are approved. Moving on to section 4F. I'll accept a motion to approve or any corrections to the CE under that section.
Yeah, so I have a number of comments actually about this section. Each lecture sort of has a similar issue. So just generally speaking, before we get into the specifics, all of the lectures were submitted for 1 hour CE credit, but all have a significantly reduced number of slides total, where there's certainly not enough education material to justify a 1 hour course. So as submitted, I would not only reduce the number of hours if we approve the lectures, but I would actually reclassify them as well. So I guess I'll go one by one here with my recommendations. So for lecture number 1, which is Asian blepharoplasty, it was submitted for 1 hour under the miscellaneous category. However, with only 12 education slides, I would recommend that we approve 0.5 hours or 30 minutes, and not under the miscellaneous category, but under the general optometry category. And then for lecture number 2, saying goodbye to multifocal IOLs, they had submitted for 1 hour credit under the general optometry category. Again, with only 13 slides of education, I would recommend we approve 0.5 hours and not under the general optometry category. Excuse me, I mentioned they had originally submitted under general optometry, but they actually submitted this lecture under ocular disease. So it'd be more appropriately classified under general optometry. And then for lecture number 3, which is drug-induced glaucoma and standalone minimally invasive glaucoma surgery, again, it was submitted 1 hour credit for glaucoma category. The glaucoma category is correct, but again, with only 19 educational slides, I would recommend we approve for 0.5 hours. And then the last lecture, Realizing the Goal, it was submitted for 1 hour under the miscellaneous category. And again, with only 14 educational slides, I would recommend that we approve as 0.5 hours and under the general optometry category rather than the miscellaneous category. And those are my comments for that section.
Okay, thank you. So let's open up for public comment, please.
We are now open for public comment on the matter. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few moments now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. So I would second the motion of Member Ross. I had some of the same concerns, but Member Ross addressed them all completely. So I would second the motion as corrected, and I'll accept a motion for those CEs.
I'll motion. And just as a aside here, in the event that these groups that submitted their education wish to resubmit them with additional education slides, we would be happy to review them and perhaps warrant extra hours because the content is of high level. It just there's not enough of it to justify the number of hours. So again, I would motion based on the recommendations that I presented.
And if I can make a friendly amendment, and if staff could also reach out to Culver Candeville Eye Center just to let them know specifically what the issues were that the committee had with them. So in the future, they can make some of those adjustments as well. So we have a motion and a second. I'll do a roll call vote.
Point of order, sir?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, in order to do your vote, we'll
Yes.
need to open up for public comment again.
Oh, apologize. Yeah, public comment, please.
If you combine the suggestion and then make a motion,
It
we
changes
can do it in one pass. But this time we must do a second one.
Thank you.
All right, we are open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. Okay, so we have a motion to approve as amended, and I will second that, and we'll do a roll call vote. Member Ross?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye. Okay, motion passes. We're going to move on to agenda item number 5. And discussion of possible action on continuing education course approval request pursuant to Title 16, California Code of Regulations, Section 1535, online applications. We'll address agenda item 5A first, and I'll accept any motions or comments.
Yeah, after reviewing this lecture, I would vote to approve it. I would make a comment that this was the only lecture submitted this time that didn't actually include the PowerPoint presentation, but it did have a very detailed outline that could certainly justify the number of hours that they're requesting for. But yeah, ideally in the future, we would hope to get the PowerPoint slides along with the submission.
Okay, thank you. And as we can open up for public comment.
Is there a motion in that suggestion?
Was there a motion?
I would motion to approve as submitted.
Thank you. And public comment, please.
We are now open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. So we have a motion to approve section 5A. I second that. We'll do a roll call vote. Member Ross?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye. So motion passes. We'll move on to agenda item 5B. I'll accept any comments or a motion to accept.
I vote to accept it as submitted.
Okay. So we have a motion. If we can open it for public comment.
We are now open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. Okay, we have a motion to accept 5B. I will second that. We'll do a roll call vote. Member Ross?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye as well. So motion passes. Moving on to agenda item 5C. I'll accept a motion or any comments on the CE.
I'll motion to approve them all as submitted.
Okay, and I'd like to open up for public comment, please.
We are open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. Okay, we have a motion to approve CE under section 5C. I will second that. We'll do a roll call vote. Member Ross?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passes. We'll move on to CE under agenda item 6A. And I'll accept any comments or a motion.
I would motion to approve them all as submitted.
Okay, and if we can open up for public comment on item 6A, please.
We are open for public comment on item 6A. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. Okay, we have motion to approve all CE under agenda item 6A. I will second that. We'll do a roll call vote. Member Ross?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye. So motion passes. We'll go on to agenda item 6B. I'll accept a motion or any comments on that CE.
I motion to submit as, or to approve as submitted.
Okay, if we can open up for a public comment.
Point of order. On the
Yes.
last one, you're supposed to second before the public comment.
Okay, I will second that. And if we can go to public comment.
Absolutely. We are open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. Okay, we have a first and a second to approve item 6B. I'll do a roll call vote. Member Ross?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passes. Member Ross, I think after going through all that CE, we should be good for the next 4 years.
I agree.
Okay, we're moving on to agenda item number 7. Discussion and possible action on BREEZE update, interface with Association of Regulatory Boards of Optometry, ARBO OE tracker.
Chair Garcia, Gregory Pruden, Executive Officer, Board of Optometry. I'm going to handle this item and the next two as well. We're coming back on this item related to staff efforts to explore feasibility of connecting the existing BREEZE system with the ARBO OE tracker system. We gave an update on this item as well for the full board last Friday. So some of this is going to be a repeat of that update. But where we are currently on this item is we've had a few conversations with the BREEZE team and discovered that in order to move forward on continuing to explore linkages between the two systems, we needed to be able to provide a process map, basically. We need to be able to explain and provide materials to the BREEZE folks of what our current process is so that they could design that functionality. So we had that conversation, and then also had on a separate track been notified by the department's organizational improvement office that we were being selected for a process improvement project, which is going to examine and look at the way that the board does all of its processes across licensing, enforcement, administration, and including continuing education and the audits that we perform therein. And so we discovered that we didn't really have a current process map that we were able to provide the BREEZE team to inform the design work that would need to happen to accomplish a possible system linkage. And as we're going through this current OIO process, this current Organizational Improvement Office project, we will come out of that project in the coming months with exactly that, a process map for how the continuing education audit process occurs. And at that point, we'll be able to go to the BREEZE team with that documentation and continue exploring how to link these two systems. The BREEZE team has said that any linkage of these systems would probably take at least a year. And we have not been able to identify any costs yet because we haven't entered into that work. So for the meantime, what staff is going to endeavor to do is to, as we talked about as well at the board meeting on March 17th, we are going to endeavor to keep reforming our CE audit process. Our goal is to do at least 5% of our auditees, of our licensees, excuse me, and we want to incrementally increase that to at least 10%. So we're presently engaged on those efforts and have been discovering some pretty easy reforms that we can make to our process, but we're really looking forward to getting into the Organizational Improvement Office project with the CE team to map our existing process and then also map what is referred to as a could-be process, which refers to a map that is trying to identify efficiencies within that process. So we think we're going to have a lot of opportunity to find and realize efficiencies in our CE audit program over the coming months, and we'll continue to explore how we can link the two systems, BREEZE and ARBO OE tracker.
Member Ross?
Thank you for the update. I'm glad to hear that we're looking into these process maps, not only for this particular issue, but other operations that we have at the board. Of course, we're always trying to improve our efficiency. So I think our licensees and the public will be glad to hear that we're undertaking a pretty hefty endeavor with all this. But yeah, as Member Garcia and I have discussed in the past, we do think that this is a worthwhile option to pursue, not only because, as you mentioned, it would help us increase our auditing of licensees to ensure the public safety, but it would also remove this burden from our current staff so that they could better focus on other items that we have here at the board. One thing that I would just mention is that although we are still in this development stage for the process map, our team at the board still does have the ability to access the OE tracker as part of their way to conduct audits. We have a number of licensees who have chosen to use this method for monitoring their CE. And I was going to mention that in April here, we have our newsletter coming out that'll highlight continuing education next month. And we talked extensively about the, number of opportunities we have in California for licensees to gain CE and the best ways to organize their CE. We also explicitly state that we have the intention of improving and increasing the number of audits that we conduct on CE this year. So I think that'll be something that people are prepared for. And in my own personal experience using this system, I found it to be very helpful. Less cumbersome. A lot of the meetings, will instantly upload this information to OE Tracker without me having to have a hard copy, file of these sorts of things. So I think there's already a trend in our profession to go this route of organizing our CE. So hopefully as we continue to see that, then as we get this process map up and going, it'll make even more sense, I think, as we go by here to develop some sort of link between our Breeze and this OE tracker system.
Yeah, very good. And just a couple comments for myself. So from my conversations with Arbo, there's one state that is seamlessly connected. So, it may be worthwhile to maybe find out which state that is, because I can't remember, and see how they did it. Maybe there's a better way to make them link. But again, I just would echo what Member Ross said, and EO Prudent, this is definitely the way forward. It's going to make everyone's life easier. EO Prudent at House of Delegates announced it to the 250 or so optometrists in the room that this was the direction we're heading. So I think the message is definitely getting out there, and with staff, putting it in our newsletters and just constantly communicating, it's just going to, I think, be a really good thing in the next few years. So thank you all for the hard work, staff, on that.
Thank you.
We need were we looking for a motion or anything on that, EO Prudent?
No, I know the agenda item contemplates that as a possibility, but I don't think staff I don't think there's a motion on the table for this at the moment. I think we just want the commitment that we have to continue to bring this to this committee and the full board to explain and share what we're doing. Certainly appreciate the mention that the both of you just made on the education and outreach component of this, that we are also endeavoring to get that information out there so that licensees know that we're being active in this space. And as Member Ross mentioned, the use of this Arbo OE tracker system is mutually beneficial both for the licensee and for the board in performing this work. So we certainly encourage licensees to become familiar with it and to utilize it. So I think, no motion at this time. Just a commitment to continue to bring this information to this committee and spread the awareness to the licensees.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
With that, we'll move on to agenda item 8. Discussion and possible action on continuing education requirements and options for including diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, DEIB, course requirements.
Yeah, I will take this one again. This is Greg Pruden, Executive Officer. So we talked about this at the last PEC meeting, wanted to bring it back. We've also put this on a future agenda for April that we're in anticipation of having on the Legislation and Regulatory Committee of this board. So this effort, this conversation on this item is continuing both here, and then we'll be looking forward to having it in earnest at the Ledge Committee as well. But I think for this item, what I wanted to highlight was both some options as to how this could be accomplished, and then also briefly discuss some recent efforts on this item around the department. So a couple options for how to accomplish a requirement that licensees take continuing education training in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. A couple different ways that could happen. One, we could pursue, as at the board level, a regulatory proposal to require this. That would that would look like a full regulatory package and proposal. Language would have to be brought to the board for the board to vote on. A motion made, and then staff would have to prepare the rulemaking package for submission to OAL. That's certainly one path that the board could pursue to accomplish a mandate. A second path, and it's the path that is one that's been more recently taken to accomplish this as a mandate, has been on the statutory side of things. That is a path that would require a bill to be introduced in the legislature, and then the legislative process to commence from there. We could, at the board, take this to the full board and have a motion to direct staff to seek that legislative proposal. If that was the option, staff would be presenting, trying to shop this as a bill to the legislature. That would be difficult to do this year, since bill introductions were completed in February. But that is certainly an option that we could pursue in the future. A second avenue, if you will, in that legislative lane is to just have conversations with our stakeholders, with others in the legislature, for example, at the policy committees, and see if there's any appetite for them to introduce this as a statutory bill, or include it in an existing bill. And again, those have been the efforts that have been most recently successful that staff has been able to discover. There were two recent efforts in the last few years. One that was not successful. AB 2637 was a bill related to the nursing board that would have required some of this training for their licensees. That bill did not go forward. Two successful recent efforts at the department were Assembly Bill 465 pertaining to Professional Fiduciaries Bureau, and AB 948 pertaining to the Bureau of Real Estate Appraisals, Real Estate Appraisers. Both of those bills were successful and instituted a cultural competency requirement and tied the cultural competency requirement to the licensure period, right? It made it a condition of renewal. So they tied the requirement to the renewal cycle. So those were two recent efforts. In fact, that AB 948, I believe, just took effect at the beginning of this year. So those are sort of the angles. If we want to pursue this as a mandate, it would be either regulatory, which would require a full package and proposal, or pursuing it in a statutory avenue, which requires a bill. Another option that we have that sort of avoids both of those, but would not necessarily lead to this being a mandate, would simply be we as the board can encourage, right? We could encourage our licensees to seek out this sort of training. Of course, doing it in that way is not a mandate. I don't believe there's anything currently preventing these courses from being applied for and submitted to this committee. So that's certainly something we could encourage stakeholders and others to pursue. So that's the update that we have on this item. Again, we'll be talking about this at the Ledge Committee in April for their possible discussion and referral to the board to take a certain path.
Thank you. Member Ross?
Thanks for the update. No, a lot of interesting options for us here. I think, as we've heard in presentation in the full board meeting, we've discussed here in the committee, this is an important issue. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what the the Leg and Reg Committee's recommendation is on moving forward. So I think, yeah, I think the next step here is letting them kind of toss around some different options here, and then yeah, we'll see what they have to say, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I agree. So I actually completed this course online yesterday, and it was through PECA. PECA is an optometry alliance. I was on there doing some CE in preparation for my license renewal. I saw this when I took it, and it was very, very good. It was a 1-hour training, and I found it very helpful. I did learn a lot. So I would definitely encourage one of these 3 pathways forward, depending on what the committees decide. But as an alternative too, is we can maybe discuss this with COA if they could offer this in their 3 or 4 annual seminars. It would be a nice way to kind of present it to the membership that's out there, the licensees, in an easy to access way. Because currently I don't know that there's a lot of DEIB CE available. I just happened to stumble upon this one. But if COA could have something like that, I think it would really make it very easy and increase the access to it.
I would second that as well. I will just make a comment. I know at many of our national meetings, like the Academy and the Optometry's meeting, these CEs have been fairly prevalent there over the last several years, and they've been pretty well attended. I've attended one myself. So yeah, I think the content is already out there. It's not something that necessarily has to be completely developed. The other thing I would point out too is that our colleges of optometry here in California, I believe all of them now have dean positions directly associated with DEIB. So yeah, there's certainly movement within the educational institutions themselves, but also with our licensees and practitioners in the state seeking this kind of education.
Okay, thank you, Member Ross.
I was just chiming in real quick to say everything you guys said is right on. This is a very important issue, and I think part of what we can also do in the context of the previous item, right, around educating our licensees about CE and what the board is doing is just to help spread this awareness, right, via our social media channels and newsletters, as was mentioned, and other forms of communicating. We can help spread the awareness and encourage our licensees to take these topics as a CE course because they are important. So we can certainly explore and look into that as well.
Great. Yeah, a lot of great comments. Thank you, everybody. Okay, again, I'm assuming this doesn't require any action as well. The committees will take this on for work in the future. So let's move on to agenda item number 9. Discussion and possible action on review process for continuing education course approval, requests, qualification standards, and a consistent review process. Review of course approval checklist.
Yeah, Gregory Pruden, Executive Officer here. We'll discuss this item. Member Ross, you had asked us to put this item on this agenda at the last PEC meeting, wanting to look at, and I think we have some slides here that we can. Yeah, there we go. The course approval checklist. We've also got. We don't need to skip ahead to it yet, but we've also got the COPE course qualifications manual was another item that you had asked to be included for this meeting, and I believe we have a third item as well. And there were some specific pages that you had mentioned, I remember, Ross, to look at, including I believe pages 11 and 12 of the COPE manual, which I believe is where some of the course definitions and course categories and explanations, if you will, are. So this item, we have put together the package, including those materials. So here in front of us is the CE course approval checklist item. Was there any specific items on this form that you wanted to discuss or highlight?
Yeah, before I make some specific comments about this, again, just to kind of speak generally on this topic, our sort of goal in all of this is that we want to improve the objectivity of how we review CE here at the board. And we want that objectivity to continue as a board member cycle on and off the committee. So, in thinking about this since our last board meeting, something that I'll get to in a minute when we talk about future agenda items is this idea of developing a PEC manual for this committee, which would include those documents that were put in our packet for today, including this checklist. But yeah, I'll comment on that more when we get there. But yeah, explicitly to this checklist, I guess I would have a couple of comments. One specific comment that I made last time is that I think we need a specific item that says that there's a standalone financial disclosure slide that appears before the course material. This is something that's usually done by most presenters who are more, I guess, savvy and are used to presenting, but I think it's something that's really important because during our review process in the last couple of times, we've come across some situations where it was pretty evident that the material being presented was by somebody sponsored by a company. A company had prepared their slides, yet there was no financial disclosure in the presentation. So I would recommend a box that has that explicitly. It's a mandatory item that you have to have that in your PowerPoint presentation. It could even go, right under the checkbox in that advertising section right there, that financial disclosure slide is in there. I guess another comment I would make about this checklist is I'm not sure it's necessary to include things that are not mandatory on this list. I would assume that if we're going to have a checklist, every single thing on here is mandatory. And if somebody chooses to submit something that's not mandatory, we can, certainly take that. But I think we could eliminate all these parentheses with mandatory and just say everything on this list is mandatory, and that's it.
Yeah, I agree. This is Member Garcia. So the checklist that we have done on the screen is slightly different than the checklist that has been included in our CE submissions.
Okay.
Correct. So there's just a few things that were not on the one on the screen now. One of them is classroom, online webinar, both are self-study, and start time and end time. I'm not sure if we're changing the checklist or this is the new one that we're going to start using going forward. So just a question, comment.
We'll look into that.
I guess my own comment to this is I think in light of this idea that I think we need not only to revise this particular checklist, but compile all of the documents essentially that we use for CE submissions. I think we're kind of at a stage where we probably just need to review all of those and update them, perhaps combine or eliminate sections. So I guess what I'm proposing is that for a future agenda item, we would put on there the development of a PEC manual. And that process would involve going through all of our current documents that we have. That way we can make modifications, bring them to these board meetings, and then go through our updates. And then once we go through the process, we may even realize that we need to develop a new document or something like that that should be added to this. So rather than spending the time today for modifying this, I think what we do is we put this on a future agenda item, and then hopefully we can get the materials that we currently have out to Dr. Garcia and myself sooner than the week before the next board meeting. So that way we have some time here to actually look through them, because I think it's going to be a fairly lengthy process.
Yeah, I would chime in here. Remember, Roz, we've got to look at the board's overall manual too. It's a few years out of date as well, and I'm not sure for this committee or any of the other committees that we have, committee specific manuals. I think it's a great idea, something that we should look at, exactly for the reason that you mentioned, right? As a manual, something to leave behind, right, for the future PEC members. So I would envision that the development of this manual might take a few meetings, depending on the substance and length of it all. But yeah, it seems like something that we should have to help inform this process.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think all of our major committees could benefit from a manual like this. So then again, we keep the continuity as we go forward. So yeah, I would recommend, at least today, no direct action on this particular item, but hopefully we can gather those materials and get it out to us so we can start beginning that review process. And then at future meetings, then we can start making some comments on specific things. And I agree with you, it's going to take several meetings to kind of hash this out.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll take that sort of for future action without a hard deadline. So it's not necessarily an action item, correct?
Right.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you both. Any other comments on that before we move on? Okay. And agenda item 10, any future agenda items from the
Well,
committee?
before we move to agenda item 10, member Ross, did you have anything you wanted to mention specific to the COPE manual, or was that also something you wanted to push off to a future item?
Yeah, last time I had made some comments that I think this particular committee would benefit by referencing some of the material that's in that code manual. And you had mentioned, let me see here, pages 11 and 12 in that manual, they talk about the specific requirements for course qualification. That would certainly be pertinent to our committee. The other is pages 7 through 10 that were before that. They talk about the standards of integrity and independence in accredited continuing education, making sure there's no bias and these sorts of things, which came up in the review process of some of our past lectures. So my vision is that when we develop a course manual, it would have a link to the COPE manual so that future committees would be able to go on there and access it. Because I understand that the COPE group is pretty good about updating their manual annually. So of course, as time goes by and it's updated, then our committee would have a reference to the most recent version of that.
Understood.
Any other comments, member Ross? EO Pruden?
Nothing further for me.
Okay, roger that. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item number 10, which is future agenda items, if there's anything from the committee.
Yeah, a couple things. I guess the first one that we already touched on here is our PEC manual. I'd like to put that on our next agenda, and then I have a feeling this will be a recurring item for a few times as we work through the process. But as I mentioned earlier, I think the kind of action item on this is compiling all of the current documents that are required to submit CE to the board and putting those in a file and sending them to us just so we can review and get our arms around the task at hand here.
There's a comment on that. So, member Ross, so just so I'm clear in my mind, so on the website is the process for CE submission and approval currently, correct? So is that the document you're referring to for us to review?
I agree. I understand it's also on there. I haven't looked directly at it in some time, so I can't verify if what's on there is also what is sent to uh, folks looking to get their presentations approved. So I guess we would have to know from the staff, like when somebody wants to submit CE to the board, are they just directly directed to go to our website and follow the process that's on there? Are they sent an email with individual documents that they're supposed to get together? If those two things are happening, are they the same or are they different? I guess that would be my question.
Yeah, I guess staff would be best to answer that, but I actually went through the process myself when I was placed on this committee, almost as an exercise to learn the process. So I use the website, and it does go through the checklist and direct the applicant how to do it and how much it is and all the details. There were some areas that were a little confusing, but I think it's clearer now than it used to be. And I think once you do it, once we have a lot of the same applicants. So I think once you do it, it becomes pretty straightforward. But I think the area that we really can focus on is alignment with COPE at some point in time to make it easier to make our CE match with OE Tracker. But yeah, there's definitely room for improvement. But staff's done a great job on the processing of CE side. There's a huge volume, as we know.
Yeah, no, thank you for those comments. I will certainly take a good look at the website and review the process that's on the website. In the meantime, if staff could also verify that what is on the website is the most up to date and accurate, that would be helpful. So we're working off the same information. And then I'm happy to send a follow-up email to our committee if we need additional documents to move forward.
Okay. Thank you, Member Ross. I have nothing to add to future agenda items.
I actually have a couple other things that I would like to
Yes.
add to the
Okay.
future here. So the next item that I would like to have for future discussion has to do with the Business Professions Committee section. It's 3059E. And this is the language that directly discusses the requirements, the CE requirements for a TPA certified optometrist in California. And the issue that I would like to get into in the future here is reviewing the current language and then considering an amendment to this language to make it overall less restrictive. And my justification for that is as our scope has expanded, things have changed. Sometimes when we're reviewing submissions for continuing education that the presenter wishes to be included in the ocular disease category, it may not actually fall directly into one of the specific categories that's listed in the statute. So rather than being restrictive with the language, being less restrictive, and this would be in line with some of the language changes that were recently approved in AB 407 in 2002, I believe.
Member Ross, I think this is somewhat related to a motion that was made and approved at the board meeting last Friday related to the COPE category course definitions and our ability or inability, if you will, to determine how those apply while looking at 3059E. For you know, as a by way of example, you mentioned ocular disease, which appears in the statute and is also a COPE category code. But there are also COPE category course codes that do not have similar language in this statute. So it becomes a little difficult to determine how and where a specific COPE course applies within 3059E. So we do have that as a future agenda item for this committee to look at is those COPE course category definitions. This was in relation also to the document the staff discovered during research for the New Jersey board, where they've published a document that is very clear about this category of course fits for this requirement or it does not fit for this requirement. So I think this item that you're talking about is similar to that too, and we can probably figure out a way at a future PEC to talk about both.
No, those are great comments. That's actually directly what I'm speaking to. This idea of making our own CE categorization more or less align with COPE. And in my opinion, you know, thinking and reviewing this, the only reason why I think we're having trouble with this is because of the restrictive language in this 3059E. So what I'm kind of thinking is that if we were to propose less restrictive language here, then we would be able to develop a similar sort of categorization as the New Jersey board did for classifying CE. And then it would make it it would make it a lot less ambiguous for folks who submit CE presentations to know which category their CE falls into, where I feel like sometimes right now when they submit, they kind of select a category hoping it might fall into that, but there's some subjectivity in that process. So this would help make it more objective. But yeah, I agree. They definitely go together.
And this, just a little bit further information on this for the committee, you know, the board is pursuing a regulatory proposal right now on CE changes to CCR 1536, which is the code of regulations that implements Business and Professions Code 3059E. And while those regulations are in process, they have not yet been noticed or filed with OAL. It's possible that there might be an opportunity in that regulation down the road to account for some of these changes. We won't know until we get to that process. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that there may be a way to account for some of these items in the regulatory process and not the statutory process. But I think we'll have to have these conversations in more detail over the coming PEC meetings.
Great. Member Ross, did you have any other future agenda items?
One last item that I think I would like to add to a future meeting is actually a discussion of our California laws exam. So currently here in California, when a prospective licensee wants to apply for licensure, part of their requirement is that they have to go to a testing center to take their law exam. And then they have to get a certain percentage on the test in order to pass. And if you pass, then you meet that requirement. Now, a couple things. Many of the states in our union, when you apply for licensure, do not require you to go to a testing center, which time and money is sort of involved in that process. More or less what they do is they create a PowerPoint document that's equivalent of give or take 2 hours worth of material. The prospective licensee studies the content, and then they're given a test that they have to complete and submit to the board. And if they complete that requirement, then they fulfill their law exam requirement. I would like to just review our process and perhaps consider maybe not requiring people to go to testing centers anymore. And part of my reasoning for this is that, as you guys recall, during COVID, this was a particular area of bottleneck where all of a sudden people couldn't go to testing centers. So then it was like, how are they going to meet this requirement? There's also a fairly restrictive penalty for folks who don't pass the test on the first go round. I believe it's several months until they're eligible to take the test again, which of course for the licensee or prospective licensee is difficult because of the time, lost wages, and this sort of thing that can be involved in that. It's also bad for our consumers though, because in a state where access to healthcare is becoming more difficult, more or less by the day, I think we could come up with a process maybe that streamlines this a little bit better. So I would like to talk about this. And in talking about whether or not somebody should take it at a standalone standardized testing center versus kind of an at-home test, I also want to talk about what our cutoff is for pass-fail criteria and this retake criteria. So for instance, I had referenced some states earlier that have an at-home test. Many of these states require a higher percentage for pass than we do here in California, some as high as 100% in order to meet that requirement. So this idea, for instance, that somehow taking the at-home test is less restrictive or something like that, they actually, in many cases, require a higher percentage in order to pass. So again, I think this would be a nice item for a future discussion.
Duly noted, and I got notes down here, and we'll come back at a future PEC and be prepared to have a detailed conversation about this. I got to look into these items and get familiar with them. Understand what you're talking about the length of time for a retest. I believe it is 6 months. I don't believe that is a penalty so much as that's the necessary amount of time it takes to change the exam so that the questions are different. And I'm not sure if our board requires you to take it in person. That might be the exam vendor that requires that. But we got to look into those things and figure out those answers. But we'll be prepared to come back at a future PEC with that.
Great. And that's all the comments I have.
Okay. Thank you, Member Ross. Great comments. And then if we can allow EO Prudent some latitude in terms of when to bring these back. I know we kind of filled his plate up pretty high, so bring them back timely, but use your best judgment in terms of when, if that's okay with you, Member Ross.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
I think our PEC is not scheduled. Our next one's not scheduled until June. So
Correct.
I'm hopeful that's sufficient amount of time.
All right. So item number 10, we didn't have any action items, and we have no more future agenda items. That brings us to number 11, adjournment. Before we do, I'd like to thank Member Ross and EO Prudent, and of course,
Mr. Chair,
our great staff. Yes.
This is David, the moderator. Would you
Yes.
consider opening for public comment on future agenda items?
Oh, absolutely. My apologies. Okay, let's open it up for public comment. Item number 10.
We are now accepting public comment on future agenda items. If you would like to make a suggestion for a future agenda item, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to proceed?
Yes, thank you very much, moderator. Okay, that brings us to adjournment. Again, thank you to all the staff and to all of you for your participation. We'll see you back on this committee in June.
Thank you. Have a good Friday and a good weekend.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.